It's now 7 o'clock. Welcome to this, the meeting of the Livermore City Council, June 10th. I now call the meeting to order. Let the roll show that all members of the council are present and accounted for. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Just to confirm with the city attorney that there was no action taken in this evening's closed session.
That is correct.
Very good. Thank you. Moving on to proclamations and presentations. This is some of the fun stuff that we get to do. Recognizing the incredible talent that we have in this community. We have the High School Senior Awards, Arts Awards. These are designed to identify, recognize, and encourage Livermore's talented high school graduating students for their accomplishments in the arts at their high school. This year, the Commission for the Arts issued 6 awards, 3 for Granada, 3 for Livermore High. The awards certificates were distributed to each graduate at their school awards program. However, I am pleased to present them with their checks tonight. The awards are great. You know, the checks are even better. And this is like real money. This is $600. So that'll buy some art supplies and hopefully send you on your way as you continue your education in the arts. Because I always maintain that the arts do a great deal to add to our quality of life. So with that, I'd ask the members of the Art Commission that are here. I believe Bob Gossman, the committee chair for the High School Senior Arts Awards, is here. There's Mr. Gossman. And Manya Lane is here. And I think that's it for the art commissioners. So with that, and feel free to get up and jostle around and take pictures. Don't worry, you don't have to stay in your seats. You can get on up and take a picture. Okay, Elias Barauskas. Aliyah Galanapur. Jody Bryant. Okay, and next we have the proclamation of June 2019 as Elder Abuse Awareness Month. And we have Cheryl Poncini and Vincent Gordon. Vincent Gordon, from the supervisor from the Alameda County Adult Protective Services. Cheryl Poncini, the Deputy District Attorney for Alameda County's District Attorney's Office. And with that, whereas elder abuse is one of the most underreported crimes in the United States, where it is estimated that only 1 in 14 cases of elder abuse comes to the attention of the Adult Protective Services and or law enforcement agencies. And whereas victims of elder abuse include both men and women of diverse backgrounds who have been victimized by strangers or by persons they know, including family members and friends. And whereas the Alameda County Social Services Agency Adult Protective Services responds to reports from individuals, concerned residents, social service and health providers, and law enforcement representatives about elders who may be physically or financially abused, neglected, or exploited. And whereas the Alameda County District Attorney's Office, its Elder Protection Unit, and its Victim Witness Division provide a network of services to elders who are in danger of becoming or who have become victims of abuse. Services include holding workshops to promote awareness, locating services for elders, working with law enforcement, and prosecuting cases of elder abuse and neglect. And whereas the Livermore Senior Services Center provides a comprehensive array of services, as well as social and recreational programs, to meet the needs of the elder population, thereby enhancing their quality of life and helping them to remain active, healthy, safe, and independent. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Livermore proclaims June 2019 as Elder Abuse Awareness Month in recognition of elders being valuable members of our city and having the right to live safely and securely in our community. I'd like to present that proclamation each to Vincent Gordon and Cheryl Poncini.
So good evening, Mayor Marchand, members of the City Council, Livermore residents, and guests. For several years, I've had the privilege of coming out here to Livermore. I say coming out because my office is in Oakland, of appearing here to accept the city's proclamation declaring June as Elder Abuse Awareness Month. And once again, on behalf of DA Nancy O'Malley and the Elder Protection Unit, I thank you for taking the time and making the effort to again recognize the importance of this issue and keeping this issue on the community's radar. Your council really is the one that deserves the congratulations for doing that, along with many of the other city councils and the County Board of Supervisors who do just this, and that is recognize the importance of this issue. In the past, when I've been here, I've talked about the importance of agencies in the community working together in order to recognize elder abuse and report elder abuse, because after all, to end abuse, abuse needs to be reported. But I'm here today to talk about a related but slightly different issue. I'm the chair of a county-wide committee that has been looking for some time at gaps in services to seniors throughout Alameda County, as well as gaps in services to dependent adults. And one of the things that we've been doing has been contacting various agencies to get their input, but now we're trying to get input from elders and dependent adults to get their perspective about gaps in services, whatever those actual or perceived gaps may be, whether it's in affordable housing for seniors and dependent adults, access to affordable medical care, access to reasonable, safe local transportation, whatever the issue is. So in that regard, I've scheduled and I'm still scheduling public forums. We had our first public forum in Oakland at the North Oakland Senior Center last week. We have a public forum scheduled in South County and Fremont in August, and I'm working to schedule at least one public forum out here in the Valley, as well as a public forum in the Hayward-San Leandro area, hopefully sometime during the summer. Once those dates are established, we'll publish them on our website, and if you'd like, I'll let the city clerk know as well. And so what are we going to do with all that information? Well, part of the reason is that we have to report all this to the state, which is the grant funder for this project. But we also plan to share this information and the report with all of the city councils in Alameda County, as well as the Board of Supervisors, in order for it hopefully to be of help to those agencies, those organizations, as they plan the future for their residents, who include an ever-growing number of elders and dependent adults. So again, thank you for keeping this issue on your community's radar.
Mr. Gordon.
Yes. So my name is Vincent Gordon from the Alameda County Adult Protective Services, and I want to thank you, Mayor Marchand, and the city council members and the residents of Livermore for this proclamation in honor of June, which is Elder Abuse Awareness Month. And Adult Protective Services and the District Attorney's Office are honored to be here to bring attention to elder and dependent adult abuse prevention and to be recognized today by your council. Throughout the year, APS actively combats elder and dependent adult abuse by providing services to our at-risk clients through our efforts at the city council, at the county and the state level to identify additional resources to aid in this fight. The month of June is particularly important because we highlight our efforts and bring attention to this fight by organizing events to bring awareness on a daily basis. This evening, I'd like to share the many events that we have going on this month. This year, APS and community partners, including the DA, will have a strong Alameda County Fair presence with giveaways and information available for attendees. We've launched an AC Transit campaign and shopping center ad campaign, so keep an eye out when riding AC Transit and when shopping in the community. We'll have nice big billboards with our Trust But Verify posters. You might have seen them around, so we'll be doing that again. We've expanded our BART advertising campaign this year through our partnership with Contra Costa, San Francisco, and San Mateo counties. We're airing our APS commercial throughout the month, and we'll have a social media presence working with partner agencies to tweet and post about elder abuse awareness. We have swag bags to give away throughout the county with the goal of working with our partners to become ambassadors in raising awareness to this really critical issue. And lastly, we will continue to receive proclamations from many city councils across the county and from the Board of Supervisors in recognition of this important month. As you well know, support of our city governments is paramount to elder and dependent adult abuse. We appreciate your support, not only in June, but throughout the year. So thank you on our behalf.
Thank you. Thank you very much and for all the work that you do to protect our seniors. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to just quickly reorder the agenda to give everybody kind of a heads up on what's happening. We're going to do the Citizens Forum, then the consent calendar, and then move on to 6.1, which is an update from Townsend and Associates on the state housing programs and some of the issues coming up between housing and transportation. The CASA Compact, some folks may have heard of. Just kind of give you a heads up, one of the initiatives that was proposed by the governor was to condition traffic and transit funds on housing production. And that's directly in contrast to what we were promised on Prop 6. So we're going to have that update before we do the public hearings. So I'd like to do the Citizens Forum first, then consent calendar, and then ask Townsend and Associates to present their update. So with that, moving on to Citizens Forum. These are items that are not on the agenda. The City Council can neither deliberate nor take action during the Citizens Forum. I ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Start with Brent Seiler, Evan Branning, and Carl Wente. Mr. Seiler.
Good evening, council, staff. So it's been a little bit longer than what I anticipated, but we're finally getting going on it. We've got real people, real names, real stories about the homeless coming out. We've started shooting videos with them. It's going to be a raw footage of what got them to where they were going. Why are they not looking to get help for drug addiction, alcoholism, what's stopping them from getting into housing? Every question we can think of, we're going to try to come up and kind of do a 3-minute clip about each person. We're trying to do the ABCs. We want to be able to assimilate the people back into the community so that when people are walking around, they know them by name. We want them to have a sense of belonging in the community and let them contribute back to the community by sharing their story. So this summer, we will start running these through different social medias. We're hoping this is going to go beyond Livermore because the problem is much bigger than Livermore, but we're going to start here. And hopefully other people will take it on and do the same thing so that when we're walking down the street, we can say, hey, Steve, hey, John, hey, Bob. We know who these people are, and they're no longer these unrecognized faces other than people walking around Walmart. Thank you.
Great, thank you. There was a great program. There's an artist, a resident artist at iGate that did wonderful pictures for people art program, and just exactly what you're talking about, to put faces to the homeless. So thank you for that. Mr. Branning, and then followed by Carl Wente.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. Thank you very much for all you do. So I'm here today because I came from the Rally of Love this weekend, and I wanted to thank the city, particularly the council members who were able to attend, as well as the mayor and Councilmember Monroe for speaking at the event, and also to thank you for the proclamation of inclusivity and diversity that has passed for the city. The city of Livermore has done a lot to welcome everyone to our city. As you may have heard, there was a little bit of an issue in Dublin recently. And so I would like to see potentially for the future on October 19th, the city of Livermore or citizens of Livermore are having a Livermore Pride festivities. And I would hope that by that time we could look at making a policy and perhaps raising the rainbow flag in downtown or at another suitable location. And I'm hoping with the time we have to lead up to the October 19th event, we can do this in an orderly manner. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Branning. Carl Wente, John Stein, Connie Copps. Mr. Wente.
Mr. Mayor, Council, how are you? Thank you, as always, for what you do, serving Livermore to make it a better place, of the people, for the people, by the people. City staff, from Mr. Roberts, Mr. Alcala, the administrative and finance behind me, city engineers behind me, innovation, economic development, I believe, is here. I'm missing other people, community development director. We have planning here, and there's a plethora I don't know. I just want to say thank you all for what you do to have the government function as well as it can, thinking about efficiency, but also thinking about how you serve the community itself, right? We are your customers. I say we loosely, as I live about a half mile out of town, but Livermore is of my home. I'd like to let you all know that it was 34-28 Warriors at the end of the first quarter. Stephen Curry had 14 in the first quarter. Durant had 11. He hit his first 2 3-pointers coming out. He was clearly favoring that. He's clearly playing hurt, but his ability to hit those shots. When I stood up, it was 56-50. Sorry if I ruined that for everybody. For those that put on a bulletproof vest to go to work, I salute you all. Thank you. I think it's fire back there. Thank you for serving the community, making it a better place all the way through. The consent calendar is large through number 13. There's just an incredible volume of work that goes into that. And so Mr. Alessio and your staff, I don't need to single out that like y'all are doing more than other people, but just the volume of fundamental work that goes into functioning and good governments. Brent Seiler, thank you for what you do. You care and put action behind it. Those that are trying to eliminate the horrific thing of elder abuse. I salute those that do that. Appreciate it. So Livermore is one of the best places for a civic lesson, right? Of all of this stuff, how it goes through, how it functions, how a referendum can function based on a legislative act, and then how an initiative could come forward, what it means. We have our general plan, we have our specific plan, we have our downtown plan, we have the votes of the council. Obviously, the state constitution gave the ability for people to put initiatives up on the ballot. You all have the ability, obviously, as well, to put initiatives on the ballot. And so, as we go through this has been asked and answered already, and proper shout out and credit to that one, but asked and answered already. We have a AAA plan. Are there ways to improve these little things here and there? But this has been asked and answered already. Let's do everything we can to move forward as a community. And so I thank y'all for what you do. I thank you for continuing to listen. Make the progress. We don't want another generation. I don't want to be talking about downtown for another 10 years, right? Let's move this forward. Let's get things done. I apologize for not staying to the end of this one, and go Warriors.
Thank you, Mr. Wente. John Stein, Connie Copps, Andrew Barker.
John Stein, 1334 Cathy Court. I thought I would stop by and personally thank you for appointing me to the Planning Commission. I enjoy the work. I will do my best to justify your faith in me and meet the goals of the city while preserving the heritage and character of the community. It's good to again have that honored title of public servant. It is an honored title. And finally, you don't miss the water till the well runs dry, and you don't miss the shade until the trees are gone downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. And you certainly bring a wealth of experience to the commission. Connie Copps, Andrew Barker, Aaron Horner.
Hi, I'm Connie Copps, and I live at 1422 Tulip Way, and I don't share the same views that Carl Wente feels. I felt excluded. I felt like I've tried to approach the city on many occasions with much subject, and I don't feel like, for some reason, I get respected, and I feel like the items I bring up deserve respect. And so, not all complaints. I think there's some really, really, really wonderful things going on in our city. But to assert my feelings, and I could list, what they are or how things have been addressed. And so I'm hoping that maybe we could just look at like that overall. And I'm also concerned about the housing too, and like how many maybe empty buildings we have like in our community that are maybe going to be rented for business, and perhaps they could be rented for housing, have, some decent condos that, have some really nice glass overlooks or something. I know with our housing, we do a lot more, I think, than a lot of communities do. And on one level, I have felt pretty welcome, but on some issues, I think that they're just, I don't see it as fair. And I realize, he might have some more pull than I do, but I just feel like maybe we should look at things and to see if our staff members are, have been playing fair in some ways. Again, I'm not accusing. Please I'm telling you how I feel and why I feel that way. And if you would look into it, I would really appreciate it. Also, I was recently nominated president for our Eagles Auxiliary Club, and I look forward to expanding our membership. I'm not that connected with that area. Back in the day, in the olden days when this club, began, there was one group where the men gravitated to and one where us knitters kind of went to, and a lot of us knitters aren't with us anymore. They moved over to the Eagles Auxiliary. But we are people helping people. And I look forward to building some bridges in the community and getting our membership up. We reside in that beautiful building on North Livermore. We do a lot of great, we represent about 20 charities, including Meals on Wheels. We help guide dogs for the blind, blind babies. We were diabetic, or building for diabetes research. So if anyone sees me on the street and wants to know more, I'd love to increase our membership. We do great things. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Copps. Andrew Barker, Aaron Horner, Joe Murphy.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Andrew Barker. I'm a Livermore resident. I'd like to draw your attention to the climate change element of your general plan. Of course, Carl Wente could explain better than me. You have a general plan, and this guides all the laws of the city, and is in some sense your most important law. And one of the elements of that general plan is the climate change element, which I'm not sure you're fully implementing. So let me just point out a few pieces of it. What are P's? P's are priorities or policies? Policy, I think. 1.3 Policy 4 says to monitor vehicle miles traveled every 2 years to evaluate the effectiveness of VMT reducing strategies in this element. I follow things pretty closely. I don't think you've been monitoring VMT every 2 years. I could be wrong. And then my favorite is Policy 1.3P8, which calls for the feasibility of potential use of parking fees and parking maximums. I did not read that wrong. Parking maximums shall also be evaluated. That appears again in 1.2 Policy 3, investigate the feasibility of establishing parking maximums. I don't think you've evaluated that feasibility, or certainly parking fees. So this element was adopted in 2009. It's been 10 years. Climate change is a very serious concern, and I think you should take it more seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barker. Aaron Horner, Joe Murphy.
Hello, my name is Aaron Horner. I work as the Director of Services for City Serve of the Tri-Valley. I'm also a Livermore resident, so thank you all for this time. Wanted to just come before you all and give a brief update on what's been happening in regards to addressing the homeless issues that we talked about several months ago in our homeless subcommittee meetings. I did want to just, if we could go back 1 year ago, City Serve was asked to identify and help to place 5 individuals into homes at Stony Creek. Those 5 spots were filled with folks who were previously homeless. Since then, 1 has moved on and another has taken that spot. So just want to let you all know that. In addition to that, in regards to the Chestnut Senior Housing Project, those applications became available in March for the general application, and there were many applications that went through there. Out of those 72 units, 25 have been made available for people that are low income for special project vouchers, and those are going through the Livermore Housing Authority process for approval. In addition to that, there are 5 units that have been identified as homeless units. So they were set aside specifically to serve those who are currently homeless. Beautiful thing that happened there, 3 different providers referred into that. So it was City Serve, it was Tri-Valley Haven, and it was Abode Services. And from there, I am aware, because of privacy reasons, I'm not able to be aware of all of the different agencies that submitted, but we were aware of 14 applications that were submitted and referrals provided for those that are currently homeless and seniors here in the area. Out of that, to date, we have 4 that have gone through the application process with Livermore Housing Authority and have been referred on to Mid-Penn Housing for their application process. So just wanted to talk through that, give you guys an update of what's been going on there. And I will tell you just briefly, we've uncovered that it is a very difficult process. I think everyone pretty much knew that, but one of the things that we're finding is how do we locate individuals? How do we help them to determine what vital documents they need to apply for this? How do we find them again for each level of the process? There are several different interviews they need to go to, several different levels of documentation that they need to provide, income documentation, birth certificates, and these are all a chore that we're working alongside them to be able to provide everything needed for them to move through the process. In addition to that, just wanted to talk briefly in my last 30 seconds here about how you can get involved. A lot of people have been asking, how can we help? How can we support? Just like Mr. Seiler, our goal, our vision is to be able to partner 1 citizen with one unhoused citizen, so that we'd be able to help to provide a unique solution for each one of those individuals. And there's a gentleman here today, you might hear from him, who is doing that now. And one of the seniors that was previously out on the streets is now moving through that process because of his intervention. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. And finally, Joe Murphy.
Thank you very much. My name is Joe Murphy. I'm a resident of Livermore, and I've been attending the subcommittee meetings on homelessness. My involvement is in January. I witnessed an assault on a gentleman named Lee. Lee is 70 years old. He's been sleeping out under CVS for a few years. A lot of people know him. He's a really great guy. Because I witnessed this assault, I was sort of started to get intertwined, and this was all new to me. So what I wanted to do today was to kind of give you an overview of the process and some of the difficulties that people that are homeless or might encounter. So the conditions as I found them were, there's a sense of isolation. You know, he has no family, nobody. Not really access to shelter. So we have these services that are provided, but somebody like Lee, and there's a few others, can't get to that location. They've got everything, you know, in their bags, and it's too far to get to. They're very vulnerable, as we discovered, right? But the surprising thing is I found that that community has a real sense of community and dignity amongst themselves. And it's really neat to see. So what happened is, early on in the process, CityServe showed up. I'm there with Lee, and they gave us really good direction. This is where you need to go, and that started the ball rolling. They came and checked on him. They helped us with the process, and what I found that were the applications, the documents needed, the different services you have to visit, Social Security, all of that I became involved in. And I can't imagine anybody who doesn't have resources to internet or didn't happen to get, you know, noticed by CityServe would accomplish this. It's been a big task. I've walked through this with Lee, which is great. So CityServe has been outstanding. Margaret and Aaron have helped us. We went to a class where they coached us on what we needed, and it was terrific. Abode Services, Asbury Methodist Church is awesome, what they do for people. Again, Lee couldn't get out there to have showers until I started giving him rides. But it's a great place. Finally, we just recently went through Livermore Housing Authority, you know, after our long process, and we ran into Catherine. She is unbelievable helpful. She's been there for 29 years, and the thing that impressed me all along in this process, the services we offer, is the kindness that those people genuinely give. So once we got the ball rolling, it would have been not possible. I guess that's really the key to this. And I'm not sure what the answer is to that, but if I bring it, at least you're aware of it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for stepping up and helping the members of our community, Mr. Murphy. Then I'm going to close the Citizens Forum. Let's see, Mr. Spence, just a quick comment on the climate change element. Mr. Barker had asked about the update on the climate change element and monitoring the vehicle miles traveled.
So we are in the process this summer, actually, of updating our climate action plan, and we will be looking at vehicle miles traveled. We have done a couple of looks through comprehensive traffic studies citywide, but haven't incorporated that back into our climate action plan. So that's something that we'll be looking to do with the update this summer.
Okay, there's a lot of other moving pieces right now, too. So, okay, great, thank you. Moving on to the consent calendar. Does anybody have any items that they'd like to pull for discussion? Okay, I do have a couple of cards. Just a quick comment on 4.08, the overdue fines model, going back to a recovery model. I think it's a great idea. As some of you may know, I used to be the library thug in Hayward. I would actually go out and collect the overdue materials. It was worth enough of my time to do that. But I think going to the recovery model, I think it's a great idea. 4.09 is the reappointment of Cynthia Patton. I think she's doing a marvelous job as our poet laureate. We have a former poet laureate, Cher Wallard, is in the audience tonight, and you can certainly appreciate the effort that goes into that. But I'm just amazed at the talent that we have in this community. And Ms. Patton did a poem for the Rally for Love, and also for the artwork, the mural out at on North Livermore that we did dedication about a week and a half ago. And the chair of the commission was Monya Lane was there also. So just some comments on those. Anything else here? Nope. And, oh, yes, one more. I would like to acknowledge the gift of Daryl and Terry West and Linda Tinney. They have donated 2 works of art. And Mr. West served for years on our planning commission with great distinction, and also headed up our graffiti task force before I got a hold of it. He was leading the volunteers to abate graffiti in the community. And he also plays a mean trombone as well, so in the community band. So he has served this community for many, many years, and I want to publicly acknowledge and express our gratitude for the work of art that you are contributing to the city, which will be going in our community sculpture garden near our Emergency Operations Center and community meeting facility. And also Linda Tinney is also donating a piece of art for the City Hall. So we all understand that art adds to our quality of life, and I'd like to acknowledge your contribution and thank you very much for that. Okay, I have 2 cards on 2 different items. Connie Copps on 4.02, and then also you have 4.11, followed by Brent Seiler on 4.11. So Ms. Copps. So
Thank you
4.02.
for allowing me to speak on the Connie Copps 1422 Tulip Way. On item 4.2, I scanned the landscape maintenance, and I did not see on there the old Springtown Golf Course. And due to fire seasons here, I'm wondering who is, taking that responsibility, who's legal responsibility is that, and how it's getting done, what kind of a schedule that's getting done on. And then on item 411, I went to the meetings on May 20th here, and you have it incorrectly listed in your report as a May 21st meeting at planning. That actually occurred June 4th, which is probably just a technicality. But I left written materials at both, and I don't really think that there is consistency of, planning. The letter I left you, you said you were going to scan it in. I don't know if planners saw that or not, but I am really concerned about the land under the Springtown Library, and I know you had addressed my concern about moving that library to Vasco, but I do think that the 2003 general plan, to me, what you're doing today does not look back to what I saw in the library, and I know it was amended a few times, so I question who was at the 2003 meeting and then how the general plan evolved. I guess there was a few amendments in 2009 and 2013, but I think that to me it doesn't look anything like that. And at one time when Sue Gary was on the council, he also kind of said, wow, people are really going to be surprised when they take a look at this. So I'm concerned about the 2-year fiscal financial plan and the CIP, and that my concerns did not seem, addressed from planning and here at the city on this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Copps. Mr. Seiler, 4.11, that is the resolution for the 2-year financial plan.
Council staff, thank you again for allowing me to speak. I came to the meeting where we were going through the budget, and for some reason, numbers, I get along well with them, and things didn't look right. So I picked on something that I had experience with, and I said, I'm going to run an experiment. I'm going to see if the numbers add up. And the numbers add up. It's not hard to do that. But here's what I found interesting. And I'm looking specifically at the generator out at the wastewater treatment plant, something that's really needed to make sure that, during an emergency, we keep processing our waste. But the original project started in 2015 with an estimated budget of $3 million. You go forward to the next budget year, and it increased to $3.4 million. And you look at the most recent one, it's $5.7 million. Now, I've put a generator here in Livermore off of National Drive. It was 1,000 kilowatt. What went out there was 2,000. Pretty much had all the same requirements. If you put a generator in, you got to do the Bay Area quality air permit. You got to get permits from the city. We have to connect into electrical, stuff like that. We did it for $500,000. So there's a big discrepancy, and I understand there's prevailing wages and other things that have to be taken in consideration. And I'm not trying to insinuate, that project should have been $500,000. But what I'm seeing is a continual increase in this project, and no one questioned anything during the budget review process about it. No city council member called anything out on any of the items that I remember when I was, or at least when I was in attendance. So then we turn around and we look at all of the things that are planned for the city. Historically, going back and looking at what was done and what was projected, about 30 to 40% got done, but we put 100% down of what we need. One thing I think is really needed is some type of a project management oversight here in the city that can bring all your analysts together and your project managers who can oversee, and a project manager group who can oversee this so that they can keep things on track, slippage doesn't happen. I mean, we paid $189,000 for a consultant to help with this. They missed the automatic transfer switch, which is essential to have so it doesn't backfeed when PG&E comes back live. They missed it. So then they had to come back and ask for more money for the same engineering group that missed it the last time. So for me, it's just one of these things, this caught my eye, and if this one is there, I'm sure there's a lot more there. So as you're looking to approve this, I would ask that you go back and maybe look at the CIP, where the projects are, what's been put into it, and has it overrun somewhere, and if so, why? Because you guys are going to be taxing us with other assets that you want us to pay for, but there's money here to pay for it. Thank you.
Seiler. Thank you, Mr. Seiler. I'm going to close the comment period. A couple questions, though. The question came about the LMD at the Springtown Golf Course. As I recall, the residents around the Springtown Golf Course were offered the opportunity to create a landscape maintenance district out there, and they refused. So it's my belief that there is no landscape maintenance district there.
That is correct, Honorable Mayor. So that wouldn't be in that item because there isn't a landscape maintenance district.
It's 4.02.
That is correct on 402 around the Springtown Golf Course. That item is taken care of by the city's general fund, and essentially the area is mowed adjacent to the property owners based on essentially the grass growth. Right. Some years it's only a few times a year, but this year it'll be more often than that simply because the rain never stopped.
Yeah, but there was no LMD out there.
There is not an LMD, so it's not included in that report.
And regarding the increase in costs for the generators, I understand that project was there were other things that project grew.
So the project included a variety of things, including the electrical work for the plant. So one of the challenges, obviously, is when you have a 50-year-old plant. It's like working on a 50-year-old house.
Pipes break.
A variety of things happen so that you can actually make sure that the new piece of equipment works with all the old. So there was a comprehensive electrical update that needed to be done as a part of that, leading to that. And then ultimately the standards that are held to for a backup generator for an essential facility are different than a private property owner as we move forward on that. And as Mr. Seiler correctly pointed out, there are a whole number of regulations that we're subject to as your government versus what a private party can do on that as well. So on the comment that had to do with sort of that the overall CIP is larger than the projects completed, and that basically encompasses the range of projects that you include in your CIP, from freeway interchanges to roadways to creek items to items that are in your sewer plant, all require sometimes regional, state, and sometimes federal approvals. So the larger list, in fact, as was explained to you during the workshop, includes those projects first that we believe that we will get done. But if any of those ultimately slip, we'll have those in the contingency area as we move forward. We're also shifting how we do some of that budgeting. In the old days, when we had a $100 million project that would take 4 years, we had $100 million essentially in that first year. That you did. Now we're actually spacing that over multiple years, so there's only a portion of the project funding in those to try and align those numbers so that it's easier to understand both what we're doing, what the contingency is, and how those will be accomplished over time.
Thank you. I do recall the significant re-engineering that had to take place with the Emergency Operations Center. Since that is an essential building, there's a lot more that has to go into that. So those are different considerations, as you pointed out, from a regular homeowner or a business. So thank you. With that, I would entertain a motion for the consent calendar, items 4.01 to 4.12. 13. 4.1 to 4.13.
I'll move approval of the consent calendar 4.01 to 4.13.
Moved by Vice Mayor Carling.
Second that.
Seconded by Councilmember Coomber. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, as I mentioned, I was going to reorder the agenda, and we're going to now come up with 6.01, Matters for Consideration, the State Housing Legislation Update, presented by Townsend Public Affairs. We have Nicola DeLuca and Alex Gibbs.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. I'm Christine Martin, your Deputy City Manager, and I would just like to provide the brief introduction for Townsend Public Affairs and remind you that back on May 13th, you directed staff to provide a housing-focused legislative update. So we are here this evening to provide that. Just a quick reminder that the city does collaborate with the Tri-Valley cities, which includes San Ramon, Dublin, Pleasanton, and the town of Danville on legislative matters. And Townsend Public Affairs assists the Tri-Valley cities with our advocacy in Sacramento and DC. Nicola DeLuca and Alex Gibbs are here this evening to give you an update on where we stand as we're about halfway through the legislative cycle this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mayor Marchand and members of the City Council. My name is Nicola DeLuca. I'm a Senior Director at Townsend Public Affairs. With me tonight is my colleague Alex Gibbs, who's a Senior Associate. We have created a helpful two-pager as to some of the hot-button housing bills that are going on in Sacramento right now. But a general overview of who we are and what we do. So we are Townsend Public Affairs. As the Deputy City Manager said, we work with Livermore as part of the Tri-Valley City Coalition. We are an advocacy firm that specializes in state and federal advocacy. We've been around for 20 plus years. We're bipartisan, and we specialize in working with municipalities. What are we? Well, we're advocates, or as some people say, lobbyists. What we like to say is we are an extension of you and your staff in both Sacramento and Washington, D.C. And so we are here to discuss some of the housing bills, talk about what else is going on in Sacramento. It's a very, very busy time. We're close to a budget happening, hopefully a vote on Thursday, which there's many things in the budget that I think the city of Livermore will be very happy with. So before we start getting into some of the specific bills or entering questions, Mr. Gibbs is just going to give a little bit of an overview of some of the things that we're doing on behalf of the city as a recap. Thank you.
Great.
You got to put that right there.
Thank you. My apologies. Hello, Mayor, members of the council. Like my colleague said, I'm Alex Gibbs, Senior Associate at Townsend Public Affairs. In the interest of time, I'll just give you a very brief overview of the types of action that we have taken this year on behalf of the city and on behalf of the Tri-Valley cities. So earlier in January, we had a advocacy day where all of the mayors of the Tri-Valley cities traveled up to Sacramento and physically met with your legislators, as well as legislators who are introducing bills that were of interest to the city. So that was really what got the ball rolling for us earlier this year. We had the opportunity to sit down with your legislators, like I had just mentioned, Assemblymember Rebecca Bauer-Cahan, Senator Steve Glazer, as well as other representatives here in the Bay Area. This was really a great opportunity for the mayors to start speaking with our members about the priority bills that were going to be coming before us in Sacramento this year, and housing was of the utmost importance in all of those conversations. This was also a holdover of the work we had done previously on housing in the previous year. That was followed up by an in-district staff day that was attended by all of the liaisons, the working group that we work with in the Tri-Valley framework. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Christine for her great work, not only as a liaison and working with us as a group, but on that particular day and representing the city of Livermore, as well as your city manager, Mark Roberts, who's done a fantastic job throughout this year working with his counterparts in Tri-Valley in developing kind of our framework and position on housing legislation. Fast forwarding throughout the year, we've continued to work on these housing issues as they have been identified as a priority. We work within that liaison framework. We also report back to councils directly, as you've seen during your quarterly meetings. I believe the most recent of which took place on May 22nd, and Nicolo addressed all of the members of all of the Tri-Valley cities on housing, and this is going to be a little bit more in-depth opportunity for back and forth and some questions to be asked. Addition to that, we hold weekly check-in calls with our representatives here in Tri-Valley, and I can tell you that Nicolo and myself spend a great deal of our time in the state capitol reporting back to your folks on all that work. So now I'll take the opportunity to open up to questions on that housing issue and all of the great work we have been doing.
So briefly, there's where we stand right now in Sacramento. We did first House of Origin deadline. So every assembly bill had to get out of the assembly floor. Every Senate bill had to get off the Senate floor. So now we're crisscrossing. Assembly bills are now going to the Senate. Senate bills are now going to the Assembly. Committees are starting up. They'll be ramping up a lot faster after Thursday. Thursday, we're expecting a vote on the budget. There's a lot of funding in the budget, not just for homelessness, but also for housing in general, public safety, parks and recreation, and other items. I would like to highlight a few of the housing bills where we've taken formal positions, where they stand and what the next steps are. One of the bills is Senate Bill 50 from Senator Wiener, which is currently a 2-year bill, which means it will be heard the earliest in January of 2020. We've been having a lot of discussions with the Senator's office on some recommended changes that we'd like to see to the bill. And at the end of this month, we are meeting with him as part of the Tri-Valley cities with the Senator in his district office to talk about some of the changes that we've proposed, such as historic districts, how ACE rail is defined, and other topics, which we will obviously keep you updated on. Another bill that is getting a lot of discussion is Senate Bill SB 330 from Senator Nancy Skinner, which I know has been identified by some as of concern. Hot off the press, Friday late afternoon, spoke directly to her office. They are taking some amendments, which will probably be public or in print, as we like to say, in about a week, that have been recommended by the American Planning Association, which will address some of the local government desires. As soon as we get those bills in print, we will work closely with the liaisons to make sure that information is passed on. And then, as the mayor knows well, there is also Assembly Bill 1487 from Assemblymember Chu, which, and Councilmember Monroe knows also, which talks about a regional entity. The kind of nexus for that bill is when redevelopment was dissolved, a huge cry for more funding to build housing, I think resonated up and down the state. So one point of AB 1487 is to have the 9 Bay Area counties vote on revenue measures for the November 2020, and it would be a way to help backfill RDA funding, but also help cities address some of their RHNA needs, regional housing needs assessment needs. This bill is definitely a work in progress. There was a good meeting about a month or so ago when Assemblymember Rebecca Bauer-Cahan brought in Assemblymember Chu, discussed some of the concerns. On the drive down, because both Alex and I live in Sacramento, I was talking to Assemblymember Chu's office. The bill continues to be a work in progress. Really want to identify a lot of the concerns that we've identified, so that's something that we're staying on top of. So with that said, there's a lot happening. There's a lot that will happen. The legislature goes on recess July 12th for about 3 weeks. They come back in August and then wrap up towards early September. And then, of course, the governor has 30 days to take action on the bills on his desk. The mayor mentioned earlier about the governor's proposal. He came out in January of talking about tying SB 1 funds, which is the gas tax funding, which was approved by the voters, about tying that to the RHNA goals of cities. They have since changed their stance a little bit. The budget trailer bill will outline future steps on how to re-look at and maybe redo the formula for RHNA numbers. So that is something we're definitely staying on top of. But from what was proposed in January to what we have now has been a bit, some changes have been made, which I think are more friendly towards cities. So with that, happy to answer any questions. And we really want to say it's been a pleasure working with the city team and representing the city of Livermore. So thank you.
Any questions for Alex or Nicolo? I'll tell you, you guys do a phenomenal job. The outreach that we did in Washington, D.C. Was organized and worked like a clock. It was amazing. And same thing with the effort up in Sacramento. I just want to congratulate you on a very organized and very focused opportunity, because you have a very limited amount of time, and we've got to stay on message. So you do a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
I had one. Go ahead. On SB 50, it's become a 2-year bill. What's your guess as to what some of the changes might be?
Well, very good question. Senator Wiener is the chair of the Senate Housing Committee. He's a very tenacious legislator, and he really is taking on the housing crisis head on. I think there will be changes as to how many units. I think one thing that we've heard is how do you define a jobs-rich area? So I think there'll be greater specificity on that. And I think he'll still maintain a focus on rail, but I think what could also then be defined is how are some of the other forms of transit being addressed in the bill. Without getting overly technical, out of respect for the viewers on TV, the issue of headways is something that was discussed a lot. As you know, whether it's BART or Caltrain, they're a little bit different than Amtrak or other forms of transit. So by trying to address transit statewide, are you incorporating what type of transit and then what have you. But I think there will be some changes. I think that will be the bill will continually change and grow, but expecting.
Nicolo, could you define headways?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So headways is during peak hours, which I think technically is like 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then like 4 p.m. to say 6:30 p.m. Headways is how quick your trains or your buses come. At first, the initial headways in the bill, I think, was around 20 minutes, which incorporated a lot. And then it was dropped down a little bit to 10 minutes. So it's basically how long you wait for your transit to come. But I expect the bill to keep moving forward in January at the earliest. I expect more outreach to transit and other providers. From all of our discussions with Senator Wiener and his office, they really want to make sure, from local government's points of view, that they're addressing the needs and not causing any undue harm, but also at the same time trying to encourage more housing.
Thank you.
If I could just add a little bit on what you said, yes, he is tenacious about adding housing. somewhere other than where he lives. And this is part of the problem, is that everybody talks about this housing crisis. But I saw a stat the last few days that in the Bay Area, 97,000 jobs were added in the last year. And I think since the first of this year, between San Francisco County and Silicon Valley, they've added close to 40,000 jobs. And if you, I just saw an article about the city of Santa Clara is pushing a project right now to bring in 25,000 jobs and 1,680 housing units. So when Santa Clara tells me there's a housing crisis and they're adding 25,000 jobs and 1,700 housing units, I don't believe them. And because they're looking for us to solve their problem. And if they're serious about solving the jobs, housing imbalance, they either need to create jobs out here or out in the Central Valley where there's the housing, or if they're going to create hundreds of thousands of jobs, they need to create the housing where they're creating the jobs. That's when I understand that Assemblymember Chu and Senator Wiener are serious about this.
I would like to highlight two of the goals of the Tri-Valley cities all working together. And Mayor, I really want to tip my cap, though I'm not wearing one, to you on one of the things that TVC Group came out right out of the gate was the balance between jobs, housing, and transportation. And in order to have one, you need to have the other two, and it's a fine balance. And so through a lot of that effort and the work with the liaisons and the city managers, that's begun to, more and more people are talking about that, not just in the Bay Area, but up and down the state, the balance between jobs, housing, and transportation. Another thing I'd really like to compliment the Tri-Valley Cities Group for, and of course, Mayor, you've been a big leader on this, is working together as a region, saying we understand that there's some concerns. It can't be solved just as snapping your fingers, but as a region, these are our recommendations. This is what we're doing. This is what we propose to do. And from my point of view, from Alex's point of view, and our firm's point of view, that's the way to tackle some of these pieces of legislation. Not a right out the gate no, but a hey, we understand what you're trying to do. Understand from our region, this is what we're doing, we've had success with, and this is what we'd like to work with you on. And that gets a way better reception.
Another component that is going to be very important is that what we are trying to accomplish here is connecting workers to their jobs with multi-billion-dollar companies. And yet, what I keep seeing is the desire to have local public agencies subsidize the transit to get these workers from their house to homes to their jobs. If these multi-billion-dollar companies want to stay in business, perhaps they need to step up and share some of those billions of dollars. Connecting BART to Livermore, $1.6 billion. There are companies where that's almost in the noise. So they're going to need to step up and contribute to this as well.
So the question I had was, so you've kind of somewhat addressed it, that it's in the conversation about it's not just housing share, but it's these other factors. I was wondering, what's the probability of that more logic getting into the conversation? And when you mention something like the region, and what's the definition of the region? Because in some definitions of the region, we're in the same region as Silicon Valley that is causing the problem. And so since there are possible factions within the region, how do we speak to region when we see the impact on this part of the region because of the actions that they're taking in particular, as pointed out, adding enormous number of jobs and with indifference to the housing. So I think you do believe them when they say there's a housing crisis. I mean, there is, and they're causing it, and they're not addressing it. So the question is, do you think that a more, what I would call a more reasonable approach and balanced approach to the conversation can happen, or are we just going to have factions within the region and we're not going to come together?
I feel that a balanced approach can happen and is happening. You all, by working with your neighboring cities, is a great example. and it's nothing too highfalutin, but by just saying jobs, housing, transportation, and balance over and over again, it's beginning to catch on. I was in a meeting down the peninsula, and I heard some elected officials, local elected officials saying the same thing. We need jobs, housing, and transportation. And I think we just have to say it over and over.
So is it catching on in the legislature?
I think it's beginning to. And so the way that the legislature works, we're getting very close to the end of this legislative session. Essentially wraps up, just say, by the end of October. And then what we do from there, then we start working on new legislative proposals. And it's something we've discussed informally at one of the dinners and at other times about what do we want to help push, whether as the lead or as a cohort, on legislative proposals for the upcoming 2020 year. I don't want anyone to think, oh, 2020, that's just down the road. Frankly, legislative proposals start getting written in October or in September, depending on what happens this year. So I think there's an opportunity. We just have to be very focused on exactly what we want, and then we start building coalitions from that. With regard to the region, we're seeing more and more, whether it's on housing, homelessness, public safety, or even kind of greenhouse gas emissions, neighboring cities beginning to work together, whether informally or formally with the JPA, and saying, hey, look, this is your concern, this is ours. Maybe I won't push some of this, but I'll help you with yours. Let's have a louder voice together, and that we've seen a lot of success when that happens.
Yeah, I'm still concerned that with the numbers that were just mentioned as the number of jobs that they're creating, it doesn't sound like there's any cooperation whatsoever, or consideration even, that they're just in it for themselves. So when you have that within the region, it seems like we've got a large barrier to get over here, in terms of selfishness, actually.
Councilmember Monroe.
So I also want to express my appreciation to you for all the work that you do. It's fantastic. Yeah, jobs, housing, transportation. I want to throw a couple other pieces into the mix, which is that somehow this has to be funded. And one of the ways that it's being asked to be funded is by giving, reducing the, oh shoot, I lost my words again, the amount of money that cities get to fund developments in order for us to pay for things like infrastructure and amenities and so on. That's a concern because in wealthier cities, I mean, basically what that does is it means that those places which are less wealthy are going to continue to be less wealthy. Those places that are wealthy can afford to put the amenities in. So it has an economic injustice aspect to it. Same thing goes with the transportation. Those people, we're still going to end up with housing far away from jobs unless we figure out some way to manage the transportation. Those people will make longer commutes. Again, it is environmental, it is economically problematic, and I think those points need to be raised again and again. And then another point that I've been, so I sat on the MTC ABAG Housing Legislative Working Group, and I listened to some of the other council members on that committee who had more experience with building than I did, speak about the difficulty of making it cost out for them as how can we make this cost out? We can't get this built. I know that one of the problems San Francisco has had is simply it's very, very expensive to build there. And it's expensive to get labor to come there and to work there, which brings me to labor, which would, so I speak to labor unions, and they say that they would like a fair working wage, which seems like a reasonable ask. But all of these moving parts don't work together. And what I am wondering, or everybody can't get everything. I know that one of the things that I found really appealing about Livermore, I'm just going to jump a little bit here to make an analogy, but hey, is the collaboration that took place in getting us to this downtown project that we have going forward. It was 7 groups, at least, with 7 different goals, all coming together to make a project that was win-win-win. And what it required is a systemic approach. It wasn't, we're going to take this one thing and make that work. It wasn't, we're going to take this other thing. We're going to do it all, and we're going to do it together. And so my question is, how is it? Is there anyone in the legislature? Are there cities? Can we as a region or as a state find a systemic approach that addresses all those moving parts? Because it seems to me we have a great opportunity to do that, but nobody's doing it. We're you know, the cities are, everybody's saying, I've got this piece of the elephant. Just switch analogies. So.
I think there is an opportunity. I think as the housing pressures get so much more, just harder and harder, whether it's best practices or cities swapping and saying this is what we've done, this is what we've done before. I think at one of the recent dinner, there was a discussion about how it's great to see the Tri-Valley cities working together, and they're in different counties. And so there's an opportunity to what works in this county, what works in that county. I think what we can do is take some of these suggestions back to your Senator Glazer and Assemblywoman Rebecca Bauer-Cahan, and say, hey, on behalf of Livermore and some of the other cities in the region, we've got some ideas. We want to know what others have done to achieve success. We'd like to share, whether it's a workshop or some type of forum, but I think that's something that we'd happily take to them and others. There's also, we've got great representatives. There's also committee chairs. There's a housing committee in both the Assembly and the Senate, things that we should pitch to their committee staff. Pitch it to leadership. The speaker, Assembly Speaker, he comes from a local government background. That could be another receptive audience. So I think there are opportunities. I would just say we need to be very focused and get the timing right when it's not right in the middle of whether it's a budget crunch or legislative deadlines, and start kind of paving that road now.
Okay.
I have one other one.
Councilmember Coomber, any questions?
Oh.
Okay, thank you.
Oh,
Councilmember Warner?
The other one was, the issue here is, it's always local control. And the thing that we're concerned about in some of these bills is they'll take local control away, as Councilmember Monroe said, and force, have us bear the costs. But it's all around housing, and you mentioned the housing people. But it seems if you're going to take local control away, what I would do is say you can't add jobs locally if you haven't added a commensurate amount of housing. Is there any kind of consideration of that?
I can't, off the top of my head, think of a bill this session that says that, but there has been a lot of discussions about whether you hold some type of, the governor in this budget, which is, hopefully going to be finalized soon, has a lot of money. They've talked about not, in the years past, it's been the stick. Well, what about the carrot? Mm-hmm. And so there's been some funding set aside in the budget to reward cities who are either doing their fair share in housing or trying to, or maybe need a little help to get to the finish line. What that looks like right now has not yet been finalized, but there has been some discussions of whether it's punishment or reward, but whether it's housing or the jobs, how do you get the balance right, and how do you encourage cities to do more?
Right, and the last thing I'll say is that, we talk about the 3 factors of the housing and the jobs and the transportation, but in my own mind, the transportation and the housing are treating the symptoms, not the problem. And the problem is the jobs imbalance. But everybody's talking about treating the symptoms and never solving the underlying cause.
Councilmember Monroe?
Yeah. Sorry, I just need to make a correction. I don't ever talk about local control. That wasn't my intent. So
I didn't say you did. I said that
Yeah.
when SB 50, a lot of the conversation is around that.
Right. So I just want to clarify that my belief is that we need to find a way to fund what takes place in cities, and that there are places where I absolutely want local control. But I also am aware that local control is what got 580 out my doorstep. Local control is what got us to the situation, because local control in every city also applies to Sunnyvale, and it applies to Cupertino, and it applies to the Silicon Valley. So I want to be just
No,
I'm fairly careful with that.
That's fine. But you can be, but I'm being very specific that I know that the conversation around SB 50 is local control comes up. And I'm just saying, we're going to talk about, and what they're talking about is taking away local control to force housing. And what I'm suggesting is that that's treating a symptom and not the cause. And if you're going to do something as dangerous as talk about taking away local control, at least solve the problem, not the symptom.
Very good. Thank you. I do have one speaker card, Andrew Barker. Oh. Councilmember Coomber, any questions, comments? Okay, great. Andrew Barker.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Barker. I'm a resident of Livermore. Since Mr. Wente has already left, maybe it's my turn to give you a civics lesson. We, the voters, we elect the state representatives and the state senators directly, and we can communicate with them directly. A few weeks ago, I spent some time calling state senators in favor of SB 50, and apparently you, who I also vote for and elect, are spending my taxpayer dollars paying nicely dressed lobbyists to go against my opinion in this case. Your responsibilities are within the city of Livermore, and I don't think it's appropriate for you to lobby against things, to spend my taxpayer money lobbying against things that a recent Public Policy Institute of California poll show 60% of Californians approve of. That poll also did breakdowns, not specifically for Livermore, but suburban areas, and the numbers are very similar there. Listening to this whole discussion makes me quite angry. There's several things you are saying that are just wrong. For example, Mr. Marchand said that Scott Wiener does not want to build housing where he lives, which is in San Francisco, and he's been extremely consistent about building much more housing in San Francisco. But the main thing that's bothering me is that you are pinning the problem on everyone else. I've just given you a civics lesson and reminded you that you're responsible for what happens in Livermore. And all I'm hearing from you is excuses about how Sunnyvale is doing the wrong thing, how San Francisco is doing the wrong thing, how Google should give us billions of dollars. These things may be true. Google, I'd be happy if they gave us billions of dollars. Cupertino should build 100,000 more units. We're currently in a housing crisis, and you, the five of you, who live comfortably in nice houses that you own, that your taxes are rent controlled because of Proposition 13, have decided that you're so comfortable you're going to wait another 10 years and just not do anything because it's everyone else's fault. We have a housing crisis. You can approve housing. You're not doing so at a sufficient rate. That is hurting your constituents. It is damaging lives. It is damaging the environment. And you should approve more housing. And you should stop paying lobbyists to fight against it. Thank you.
Close public comment period. Yes, remember the mayor of Cupertino said that he was going to build a wall around his city when Spaceship Apple landed. That's irresponsible. We are elected to serve the best interests of the city of Livermore, and we have found many things in Prop 50 or in SB 50. The first half dozen elements of that we can live with. The last four elements are harmful. They are damaging. Yes, we can build more housing, but in the last 6 years, they created 500,000 jobs and 60,000 housing units. So who's creating the crisis? As to Councilmember Warner's point, they are creating the crisis. And we have a choice of housing out here. I choose to not live in a 30-story condo. Mr. Wiener prefers that type of lifestyle. We have a choice out here. If he wants to do that, that's great. But don't create 500,000 jobs and then tell me that I've got to create the housing. Because with the 3.5 million housing units that the governor wants to add, when's he going to build another Lake Oroville? Because that's where the water's going to have to come from. And we don't have that yet. And I haven't heard anything about the commitment to create more water storage and more water resources, or who's going to pay for the additional schools or the police and the fire and all of the other pieces of infrastructure that we have to maintain that is going to be forced upon us because other cities are creating the jobs and they're not creating the housing. And they're going, one of the proposals in Prop 50 is to create another bureaucracy that is going to require cities like Livermore to pay for the housing so that Silicon Valley can continue to create more jobs. So, as I pointed out, they're saying this, you hear about a housing crisis, and yet Santa Clara is proposing creating 25,000 jobs. Why aren't they creating 25,000 housing units? They're creating less than 1,700. So their actions don't stand up to what they're saying. So the reason that we're up here talking about Prop 50 is we are elected to the best interests of the city of Livermore. And there are components of Prop 50 that we, as the elected representatives, do not believe are in the best interests, and that is our charge. So thank you for your comments, but that's why we're doing what we're doing.
So
it will harm the city.
I'll just add to that. I mean, I come back to there's a reason for the problem, and treating the symptom doesn't do it. That within Livermore, we do not have the capacity, even if we wanted to solve the region's housing crisis within Livermore. Not possible. So what is important here is to point the efforts to solving the root cause, not the symptom, because it's not possible for Livermore to build enough houses to solve the crisis generated by the peninsula. Not possible. So we have to solve the problem.
If you even take the point that if we did, let's say we did add 1 million housing units between here and the San Joaquin Valley, how do they get to Silicon Valley? There aren't the roads. There isn't the transit. We don't have a mechanism right now to get people from their homes to their jobs. So even if we built the housing, the gridlock would be exponentially worse. So this is why we face the problem, is because people are looking at just individual pieces of the problem. They're not looking at the holistic solutions.
The last thing is, I firmly believe that the jobs housing ratio is what matters, and that's what each city should be held to, and we're doing well.
There was a recent graphic that I saw at the ACTC, and it showed 17 jobs for every housing unit that's being produced. Counties that had 10 jobs for every housing unit produced. So they're looking to us to solve their problems, but it won't solve the problem because nobody's building the transit to get them from their homes to their, and then at the same time, they're looking for public agencies to subsidize the transit so that they can continue to create jobs. We're trying to bring in Valley Link, and that's going to be a big lift to connect the jobs and housing. They're not proposing any funding for that. That's going to be locally funded, and yet it's going to connect people to their multi-billion-dollar corporations. Yeah.
So I just want to acknowledge the frustration. And also to say that I actually believe that whatever legislation passes, because we have a city that actually does a pretty good job of planning, we will manage however it works. We will build housing at least to whatever is required. So I am actually not concerned, and maybe not enough, whatever, that's, So I'm not actually concerned with the local effect on Livermore of SB 50 or any of the local bills. I would like to see changes, but what I'm speaking to now is my belief in us as a local entity. But the reason that you don't hear me talk about local control is that I believe that these really are regional issues. And the reason that I brought up the systemic issue is because I'm really concerned that with who gets to drive on the roads. I am concerned with how it is that we do pay for this. And I mean as a community, not as a city, not as individuals. I mean as a community. in order to build the housing we need to build, in order to build the roads we need to build, in order to build what we need to do to support the infrastructure that we've created, somehow we have to think about how we move forward on that. And that's why I talk about a collaborative process. So I guess what I'm wondering is, how can we together move forward on this? What solutions would you have for building the housing and then getting people from point A to point B? How do we make that happen? How do we manage the labor problems that I mentioned? How do we manage the quality of life issues? I'm a Chicago girl, and I remember Cabrini Green, and that's a push. But that is what happens. Cabrini Green are tenements that were built for the poorest among us. Now, I'm making a little bit, I'm exaggerating a little bit here to make the point, but the point is that if you build housing without amenities, if you don't take care of people and give them quality of life, they got nothing. I'm not asking you to hang on to my stuff. I want to make it possible for your generation. What I want, though, is for you to have the quality of life that works. And that's not what's being offered right now. That's why I really push for this systemic approach.
Vice Mayor Carling.
I think it's presumptuous for anyone to tell me what I'm thinking when they haven't heard what I'm thinking. And I've never made an opinion about SB 50 from this dais, ever. So to assume that I'm of like mind with my colleagues up here is just flat out wrong.
Any more comments? Okay. Gentlemen, thank you ever so much for coming all the way down here, and thank you for your great efforts up at in Sacramento and Washington, D.C. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to 5.01. That's back to the Republic Square Master Sign Program. We have Jake Potter.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. Tonight we'll be discussing the proposed Master Sign Program for the Republic Square development.
Check here. It's on.
All right, cool. So by way of background, the Republic Square development is located directly east of Livermore Outlets, shaded in the red on the screen there. And the Planning Commission approved the Republic Square development in November of 2017, which includes commercial retail, restaurants, and 2 hotels. The approval specified that all signage would return to decision makers for review and approval, which is the reason why you're reviewing the signage tonight. Republic Square is currently under construction and expected to open next year, and it's located within the El Charro Specific Plan. And the specific plan requires that all sign standards within the specific plan area are established through master sign programs and then incorporated by reference into the site's zoning district, thus amending the zoning district at the site, which is also why the City Council is reviewing the project tonight. All master sign programs must conform to the site's underlying zoning, which in this case is the El Charro Specific Plan, and the specific plan allows for wall signs, directional signs, and freestanding signs. You can advance the slide, thanks. So the proposed master sign program does contain all 3 allowed sign types: wall signs, freestanding signs, and directional signs. And the wall and directional signs will be constructed of high quality materials, will be scaled appropriately to their surroundings, and will effectively identify tenants without detracting from the character of the plan area, which is consistent with the El Charro Specific Plan. All freestanding signs will also be constructed of high-quality materials, will not exceed the heights of adjacent buildings, and will conform to the general plan's scenic corridor policies. Although the specific plan does call for externally illuminated freestanding signs, this master sign program does propose internally lit signs, which the Planning Commission and staff support in order to limit fugitive light and glare among the I-580 corridor and the airport protection area. This is also consistent with what the approved freestanding signage at the outlets and the shops at Livermore developments. Ultimately, the proposed master sign program establishes Republic Square sign standards in conformance with the El Charro specific plan. The plan development amendment will incorporate the master sign program into the site zoning district as required, and the site's signage is consistent with the general plan and the development code. It's for these reasons that the Planning Commission and the staff recommend that the City Council approve the master sign program by adopting a resolution finding the project is exempt from CEQA and approving the project, and by introducing an ordinance that would incorporate the master sign program into the site's zoning district. That concludes my presentation. I welcome any questions you may have, and I believe the applicant would like to say a few words.
Any questions at this point? Okay. Sir, a few comments.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Arardi. I'm a Senior Vice President with Republic Family of Companies, a developer, and I'm the project executive for Republic Square at Livermore. It's a pleasure to be here before you this evening, and I'd like to thank you for your time and your staff for all the good work they've done. We support their recommendation and the Planning Commission's previous approval. Jake asked me to maybe give you a little update as to where we are in the project, and now that the rain has stopped, we are actually out there building, and our contractor has no excuse on deliveries. So in essence, our earliest buildings will be delivered in shell deliveries in August and September this year. Those are Retail C is a building you can see that's closest to Jack London Road. You can see the scaffolding on the outside. And then our Restaurant E, which is our Starbucks building, you can see that up also. The wood frames are up. Our two hotels, Homewood Suites and the Residence Inn, are both anticipated to open hopefully at the end of the first quarter 2020 or shortly thereafter. And you can see the woods going up on those also. And then our two larger buildings that are a little closer to the freeway, we're looking at the end of this year for those two buildings. And then we have 4 restaurant pads, which we call Restaurant A, B, C, and D. Those will be, shells will be complete on those, again, probably first quarter 2020. So that's an update to what's going on. We've passed on lots of paper on deals with restaurants, health facilities, day spas, beauty services, Starbucks, you know, is coming, exercise folks, entertainment uses. We closed a transaction with Simon on 4.5 acres, and you see they've built their parking lot out there, and it's being well utilized so far. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Great. Any questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for the update. Okay. I have no speaker cards, so I'll open the public hearing, but seeing no cards, I'll close the public hearing. Any questions from the council? Do I have a motion to adopt the resolution and introduce an ordinance? Mr. City Attorney, I can do those with one motion? Okay. So adopt a resolution finding the project is categorically exempt from CEQA and introduce an ordinance adopting the Plan Development 1805. Okay. Moved by Councilmember Warner.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councilmember Coomber. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, now to 5.02. This is the purchase and sale and loan agreements and affordable housing regulatory agreement for covenants with the Tri-Valley Reach for city-owned properties on Gillette Place and North L. Fran Reisner.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. In March, City Council approved a disposition plan for 5 city-owned townhouses located in the Station Square development downtown. The disposition plan authorized staff to negotiate with Tri-Valley Reach to purchase a vacant unit located at 153 Gillette Place, number 110, along with 1 additional unit if available. Tri-Valley Reach's mission is to create shared housing for persons with developmental disabilities who are able to live independently. Council's previous action directed that individual sales agreements be approved by City Council through a public process, which is what we are doing tonight. Over the past few months, staff and the city's relocation specialist have been communicating with tenants in accordance with the plan. The 4 tenants were offered an opportunity to purchase the units that they occupy, along with down payment assistance to do so. Only one of the 4 tenants is pursuing this option. At this time, 2 tenants have already moved and 1 expressed intent to move before August. Reach has requested to purchase a second unit located at 161 North L Street, number 113, which is now vacant. As previously discussed with City Council in March, Reach requires secondary financing from the city to purchase the units because it will allow them to keep the properties financially sustainable for tenants who are only able to pay extremely low rents. Under the financing proposal, Reach will pay the city $175,000 each for the properties, made up of a combination of their own funds and a private bank loan. And the city would hold a silent second loans for $495,000 for each property. The amount of the city loans plus cash paid by Reach totals the appraised fair market value of the units. Reach will also contribute their own funds to establish an operating and maintenance reserve for the properties. The city's loans would be repaid over 55 years through excess revenues, if any are received, after all maintenance and mortgage expenses are paid. Regulatory agreements recorded on the property will ensure that the homes are continuously serve extremely low-income disabled adults and that they're well-maintained and property managed. So staff now recommends City Council authorize the sale of 153 Gillette Place, number 110, and 161 North L Street, number 113 to Tri-Valley Reach, and authorize the city manager to execute purchase, sale, and loan agreements, regulatory agreements, and associated sale documents for the units. And this action is consistent with the disposition plan approved by City Council. And staff and representative from Tri-Valley Reach are available to answer questions that council may have.
Okay, any questions for council at this point? I have a question. It says in the staff report that that Reach will pay the city $175,000 for each of the properties. But if we're also carrying a $495,000 silent second, that means actually they're paying the city $670,000.
That's correct. Yeah, that's
Okay.
the secured value of the
I just wanted to
home.
make sure that
Yeah.
because it says they're paying the city $175,000 for each property, and I'm thinking, well, who's going to pay the other $495,000?
These would be the proceeds that the city would
Okay, That's the cash we
receive
get.
right away.
Right. Okay. But so that's up front. It's like a down payment, and then the rest of it is the second.
It sits in a silent second. Yeah.
Right, okay.
That they would
But
not
it-
need to
but
make payments on.
They're not just paying us the $175,000.
That's correct.
It's in addition to the $495,000.
That's
okay.
correct. Yeah.
Just want to make sure I didn't slip by there.
The difference is your silent second isn't paid back over time like a normal mortgage. So from that perspective, your immediate proceeds, the silent second will still be recorded against the property to ensure it's used, and it'll be paid off through excess proceeds, which is a much less certain every month kind of payment than a regular mortgage.
Okay. I just want that to be the whole and total amount. Okay. Great. Thank you. I have a comment card from Kay King, Tri-Valley Reach.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members and staff. I am Kay King. I'm on the board of Tri-Valley Reach. And I really just wanted to take a moment to, first of all, thank staff for bringing this opportunity to us quite some time ago and working very tirelessly on our behalf. And also to thank the City Council for acknowledging this request and recommendation and hopefully your approval. I wanted to say a little bit about Reach. We've been around for 28 years, longer than 28 years actually. And our focus has always been on inclusion for adults with a developmental disability. And we've done that by providing a living environment that is safe, quality, and most importantly, affordable. Our tenants are always below the 30% AMI and categorized in the extremely low income category. We have a total of 10 properties and serve 26 adults, and 3 properties are currently in Livermore and 7 are in Pleasanton. Of these 10 homes, 2 are female homes and the rest are male, and that's just a matter of how it's developed over time for independent living. I think all of us recognize and agree that an individual with a developmental disability is a remarkable human being and very capable of accomplishing great things when given an opportunity. And being able to live independently in a home such as the Station Square unit or any one of the other properties is just one step in their developing their independence as well as their life skill. We have many tenants that are employed by local businesses, and several of them you might recognize or even know work at Safeway in Pleasanton and Livermore. We have a couple of other tenants who are in the program of Futures Explored, which is also located here in Livermore. And there is a segment of Futures that's called Inclusion Films, and these individuals are developing the skill of film and video production. They're also for hire, in case you ever want to do any professional videos, and they do a very good job. So on behalf of REACH, our board, our tenants, the community we serve, and hopefully our future tenants, we just wanted to express our sincere thank you and gratefulness to be considered and approached, because it's been a very, very long time since REACH has been able to acquire additional properties, and the need is very, very great for individuals with development disabilities. So thank you. Any questions?
All right. Any questions for Ms. King?
Okay.
Great. Thank you very much,
Thank
Ms.
you.
King. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the council. Comments from the council? Is there a motion to adopt the resolution authorizing the city manager to execute the 2 carryback loans and to execute the grant deeds?
I will so move.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Monroe, seconded by Vice Mayor Carling. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, with that, we are on to report outs and matters initiated. Councilmember Coomber.
Well, I've got a great combination of the LAVTA Finance and Administration meeting, as well as Project and Services meeting, and a LAVTA board meeting, which the focus, as is with almost everyone this time of year, is budgetary concerns, and that we discussed and are rolling forward with hearing a final on the budget for LAVTA. But both Project and Services, as well as Finance and Administration committees, move the LAVTA budget to the. That's what I get. Yeah, and to the board, and we approved it from there. So, as a matter initiated, this was been going with me since the initiative process has been, and I'm hoping staff is on top of this. I believe probably you've probably preemptive strike to this, but I want to know what the initiative process, including the amount to, what's it going to cost the city to include it on a ballot, to move Veterans Way 11 feet as is specified in their initiative, to put another RFP out for another hotel developer for the west side, since nobody wanted it the first time. Just whatever cost we are going to have to expend just by extending this whole process with getting the downtown built. What is it going to cost us to keep extending this? So just when you get some time and feel like crunching numbers, I'd really like to know. And I kind of presume the rest of my colleagues would too.
Sounds like a good number to have.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
So I think what you're mentioning is basically the 9212. Is that what it's called?
So this is one facet of that. So the request right now is extremely specific around the financial impacts of that. When an initiative is filed, the council has the ability to request for an informational report. The reason it's called a 9212 report, that's the government code section that describes that. And so you can ask for any information related to the effects of that initiative. Of course, you can do that at any time. That process deals with timing and other sorts of things near the end of the process after signatures are gathered, but you are free to ask for that information at any point, including now. So if there are other things in particular that the council would like to know, what we can do is develop some information and return to you with sort of a list of analyses that we could perform.
Can I ask one other clarifying question here? To answer the questions, I mean, it takes some thought, and also what's going on might be in flux a little bit. Can you update a 9212, or once you issue one, you're done?
So essentially what you'd be asking for is information on the initiative, and you are free to continue to provide information on that all the way up until it's placed on the ballot.
Correct. So there's Elections Code 9212 provides that if an initiative qualifies and returns to the council, they have one of three decisions to make. Either request a 9212 report at that time, place the matter on the ballot, or adopt that particular ordinance. Those are your decision points. Generally, if you request a 9212 report at that time, you have 30 days to get that report back. And then you have two actions that you can take. There's nothing in that Elections Code that prohibits you from updating that report later on. Or it authorizes you to request a report early. So you can continue to have that process evolve. But you just have a narrow window of time if the measure qualifies.
So there's no harm in collecting the kind of information that was requested too early, and then you can always update it.
Correct. At this point, what I'm assuming was requested by Councilor Coomer is just report on information, not necessarily a specific 9212 report. I mean, you don't have to call it by that because it's not.
No, I know, but what I wanted to do was just understand the flexibility and to update, because I think the first cut at something like that give you one thing, and then you think a little bit deeper and you might get another, and events might change. So these returns to us on the financial impacts, if we understand that they could evolve. And okay, that was my clarifying question.
That is correct.
The way I understand Councilmember Coomer's request was, I think what you were looking for was this might influence whether or not a resident would be interested in signing it. If they saw what this might cost them, it would perhaps influence their decision on whether or not to sign the initiative. Okay.
Yeah, I can give you the first cut at it.
So my understanding is there's concurrence on staff developing information for council consideration on what the financial impacts of the initiative would be, both direct and required by action of the initiative.
Yeah, but I don't think we're looking for a full 9212 at this point.
No, but I think
just information.
Yeah, if I could say it, is what I also heard was the request for information, but also that you were going to come back in what forms and timing and efforts and stuff. Just let us know. What I heard was, can we begin to gather the facts, and what do we have to do that?
So what we can return to you with is one of two things. If we are, maybe the easiest way to do it would be to return to you with direct costs and identification of additional areas that would require more estimates. In other words, for example, giving you an estimate on what a special election would cost is a fairly straightforward proposition. Trying to figure out the intricacies of what the potential differences in costs of land between different land use scenarios would be quite a bit more complicated. So perhaps we'll do a first cut on the very straightforward things and a list of other possible things that could be studied for your consideration. Would that be the intent?
Sounds good.
Very good.
Thank you. Councilmember Monroe.
All right, so I think it's been about 3 weeks, and a few things have happened. So May 15th, along with many of the other council members and the mayor, attended the Civic Appreciation Dinner, and it was such a pleasure to see how many people work with the city on advisory bodies to make this city a wonderful place. And I thought that given that, I would do a shout out to people who might want to be involved. And so here's the website. Check it out. You too can join an advisory body. Did you get that? Tell me when you're ready. Okay. All right. On May 19th, I had the honor of attending the Guru Vandana ceremony, meaning reverence for the teacher. And in this ceremony, members of Livermore's Hindu community honored their teachers with blessings. I got to be honored too. It was totally awesome, and it was a real honor to participate. May 22nd, as you've already heard, Tri-Valley Cities met to discuss issues which we've already heard. May 23rd, I attended the Tri-Valley Affordable Housing Committee. The most interesting thing there was presentations on land, I'm not going to get the words right, the affordable land trusts, very sort of similar to ways that we preserve vineyards. You can do the same thing with land for housing. And I found that to be just a most interesting way to think about going forward as a way to think about the housing situation that we're in. That same day, I attended the mayor's State of the City address. Thank you very much. Very nicely done. Thank you. Went to the grand opening of Access Community Health's dental clinic in Dublin. It's already actually been up and working. I think it's served 240 people, or had as of that date. And it's making a real difference in the health of those who cannot, who have trouble affording health care. And then finally, attended the MTC ABAG Housing Legislation Working Group, where we discussed housing, of all things. May 28th, Vice Mayor Carling and I met with staff to look at the homelessness situation, how we're going to be, what the situation is, allocation of money, what our short-term priorities are, given the possibilities we've been considering these many months, and then how we move to the next phase. May 29th, Livermorium Day is awesome, but you'll talk about that.
Oh, sure.
June 6th, I attended the ABAG assembly. I was most interested in the presentation on how their two cities, Hayward and Burlingame, are working on ways for their cities to address the impact of the jobs, transportation, housing issues California faces. I'm sorry, I meant Fremont, not Hayward. Fremont, of course, sits in one of the most awful areas for transportation. It is hit by, I think, 3 roads that are major transportation roads. It is building housing. I think it's doubled in size in a fairly short period of time, and it's managing its infrastructure. So it was very interesting to hear how they manage that, and I'm hoping that we can use that going forward in Livermore. The projects were very different, but the thing that struck me was the inclusive and collaborative nature of the way they approach the issues. June 7th, I attended the 101st Rodeo, again, along with other council members. Okay, so it was my first rodeo. And I'm both embarrassed by that, having lived in Livermore for way too long to have that be my first rodeo. But I am also pleased that I can now say with complete truth, it's not my first rodeo. It was a really interesting exhibition of a set of skills that I will never have and frankly never want, but wow. And then finally, along with the mayor, on June 8th, I attended the Rally for Love, which was a celebration of inclusion and diversity. You want to know, what was interesting is that the overlap between the Saturday event and the Sunday event was almost nil. And one of the things I also love about Livermore is that both of those events are authentically Livermore. Couple of other things I wanted to mention. During summer and maybe beyond, I want to be welcoming residents, especially children, to come and visit me. So with that, as in this role as This is your city council. This is your city council member. And I'm hoping other council members will join me in doing so. So I'll be reading stories at Civic Center on Wednesdays and heading over to City Hall for children and parents to come and read with me. I have a stash of candy, and there's also books acquired from Friends of the Library, vetted by my grandchildren. So come see me. I also wanted to give a shout out to Mr. Seiler for the work on interviewing and videoing. That is, bringing real live stories of people lends meaning, and really I think has been critical in fighting the narrative that many cities have around homelessness. It really gives faces to them. I really appreciate that work. Under matters initiated, in response to Mr. Branning, who spoke about flying the rainbow flag during in October, it's also something I've been thinking about, as you can see. And particularly as the council passed the Proclamation of Inclusion, I did want to pursue that question of flying the rainbow flag in Livermore in future years. So with that in mind, I'd like to request that city staff review existing flag policies in Livermore, come up with a range of options to how they could be modified in a manner similar to what surrounding cities have done. And then I also would like to see how we could think about this with including other observances. For example, we could use federal or state observances to develop a list. February is Black History Month. March is Women's History Month. May is Asian Pacific Islanders Month. And June, of course, is Pride Month. When I looked at this, there were a few that I think Donut Month may have been on there too. I'm not sure. Maybe not that one. I might be making that one up too. And then lastly, I was debating whether I wanted to comment on this recent initiative, but I have.
So we just got a matters sort of put out there.
Oh, I can't.
Can I do a quick check? Yes, I just wanted to do a quick check and see whether we had concurrence on that one.
Oh, yeah.
What was it?
So essentially, my understanding is essentially research flag policies for the city's council's consideration.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just, when I ran for office, one of the things that inspired me was, in fact, the collaborative nature of the process by which we got to the downtown plan.
By the way, there were 19 stakeholders. Not
19.
There were 19, and Vice Mayor Carling was one of the chairs on that. There's 19 stakeholders, and that was even more impressive to bring everybody together.
It was. So I only counted 7, but obviously I missed a few. So
he has the scars to prove it.
So we are an incredibly diverse city, and we are made stronger by that collaboration. This is an issue, this issue of what do we do with downtown is something that has gone on for a very long time. It's costly. I don't really, I would like to see the actual numbers, but that doesn't actually count the money that's gone in the past, for the past 25 years. We've been talking about this for 25 years. And now we're being asked to delay it one more time. I'm wondering why we need to spend private and public money that could be spent on caring for the homeless, ensuring that our infrastructure is in good condition, or developing community programs for all of us. Couldn't that money be used in better ways, both the private and the public money? When I talk to voters, and I walked the streets asking people for votes, yes, I did that on purpose. I asked them, this question came up, and there were only a few people who did not want it to go forward. This is not a matter of division within the city. This is a matter of collaboration. People are happy with what we have. And I'm just really sorry that once again, this becomes the issue, not homelessness, not infrastructure, not the jobs, housing, transportation balance. So.
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Warner.
I'll try and be shorter here, brief. So it was already mentioned was the rodeo, the wheels board meeting, the civic appreciation dinner. One thing I didn't hear was the rodeo parade. That was fun. So the add-on for the wheels board meeting was that one of the topics, in addition to the overall budget, was how can we be efficient in handling wheels and the Valley Link. And I thought we had a good discussion and that we've got a path forward on that. And the I guess the other thing I would just want to check with the city clerk, if I may. Did we have an election last November?
Yes, we did.
Are you finished?
Vice Mayor Carling.
My turn, okay. So on the 22nd, I had stop waste meeting, and on that evening, there was the Tri-Valley City Council meeting and dinner in Santa Ramon that many of us went to. I also enjoyed the mayor's State of the City address on the 23rd. Later that evening, then League of California Cities had a dinner and meeting up in Antioch, and we had some folks from CalPERS there to talk about CalPERS and defending their investments and so on and so forth, and telling us city folk that we're going to have to pay more. That we're in good hands, right? As Councilmember Monroe mentioned, 28th we had a meeting on homeless, and I would give a shout out to the folks, Eric Orenga and Claudia Young, both. They're just doing a terrific job, and I think one of the things that we learned was that the reporting requirements are a moving target, and so I think both Eric and Claudia have been dealing with that and coming to some resolution, I'm sure. But it's been a challenge, and I think we all appreciate, and the folks in this community ought to appreciate dedicated folks like Eric and Claudia for dealing with this. You know, of course, with the Livermorium Plaza celebration was an opportunity to celebrate some of the high school and grade school kids that are in our community that are thinking about science and what they might do in their own careers. And it's always a pleasure to have Element 116 Jazz Band there entertaining us because they are so terrific. And like several of us up here, yes, the rodeo parade was terrific. I had two of my grandchildren with me, so it was a lot of fun.
All right, very good, thank you. Okay, in addition to everything else that I attended with my colleagues, on May 27th, I attended 4 Memorial Day services to honor the sacrifices of our veterans, one at each of our cemeteries and also the Veterans Building. On the 29th, there was a bus stop mural dedication. Laura Thornier and the Granada High School students did a phenomenal job on a Candyland theme. And this is Laura Thornier's last mural. She's going to be retiring. So she's done a lot to beautify our community. On the 30th of May, I was at an Alameda County Transportation Commission retreat where we talked about regional transit solutions, including regional rail, autonomous vehicles, transportation network companies like Lyft and Uber, and then how do you link those technologies? Because the same technologies, on one hand, would be it would be heaven for transportation if everybody were using these things. But if everybody had an autonomous vehicle, it would be a transportation hell because everybody would be on the roads at the same time. So how do you link those technologies and collaborate? Also, the same day as was mentioned, Livermorium Day, where we recognized Altamont Creek as a Green Ribbon school. Livermore High School was recognized as a state distinguished school, and System Overload Robotics Club made it to the First World Championships. That was very cool. And they were there, as well as a number of other students that had been recognized at the science fairs and science competitions. On the May 31st, I participated in a mayor's panel and also presented a talk at the Smart Cities Conference in San Jose, and how Livermore is not necessarily by definition of a smart city, but we create the technologies that smart cities use to operate are created right here in Livermore. I spoke at the East Meets West International Art Exhibition on June 2nd, and on June 5th was the 35th Citizens Police Academy graduation. It was remarkable. I'd like to recognize Leslie Prado for her remarkable work on coordinating these Citizens Police Academy program, and I believe this may also be her last program, as she may be retiring at the end of this year. On the same date, Sandia had a community outreach program where they were talking about the life extension programs and a lot of the other amazing things that they do at Sandia. I also attended a groundbreaking for their new computer and technology building that's going up out there. June 7th was the KTVU Zip Trip, where they came out to Livermore to see what a remarkable community Livermore is, and they covered the whole city. We were out at Lizzie Fountain. Thanks to Public Works for turning off the timer on that. Otherwise, it would have been a very exciting 5 minutes. But they covered the city and just underscored what a remarkable place this is. As was mentioned before, we had the rodeo parade. This was also, I presented a proclamation because this was the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Livermore Stockman's Rodeo Association, which came out of the original Stockman's Protective Association, founded in 1904. And then in 1918, of course, they had the founding of the rodeo. The year later, they created the Stockman's Rodeo Association, and this was their 100th anniversary and the 101st running of the world's fastest rodeo right here in Livermore. Of course, the 9th was the Rally for Love, and today was the Planning Policy and Ledge Committee for the Alameda County Transportation Commission, where we had a regional planning update on the requested transportation projects and also the county-wide active transportation plan, which has a focus on safety. Amazingly enough, 65% of pedestrian collisions with automobiles, 59% of bicycle collisions with automobiles happen on 4% of the roads. So a little more expense on that low-hanging fruit, we can make a significant improvement on the number of collisions that people experience, and certainly to improve safety. So with that, there being no further items before the council, I'd like to adjourn the meeting to June 24th, 7 p.m. Thank you very much.